Yeah, our guest today is Ignacio Garza. He's a retired 10th Special Forces Group soldier and was in charge of a lot of awesome programs while he was over there. He's also the founder of the Special Forces Foundation, which is the premier foundation that is helping Special Forces soldiers transition out of the military. There's also support for active duty individuals as well. And really the whole scope of, getting back in, reinventing yourself and becoming a productive member of the society and finding their place, the Special Forces Foundation is there for us. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming here. And what we'd like to do is obviously find out who you are, your background, what drove you to be the man that you are today. And I think the best part to start, or the best part in life to start that is going to be your childhood. Where did you grow up? What was your family situation like?
Well, first, thanks for having me here, and thanks for GRITR for hosting this, and Creek and Timber for being a great partner with the Special Forces Foundation and inviting us to come here and be able to tell our story as a nonprofit and the work that we're doing. We've gotten to a point where the DOD and the VA, they're huge moving ships, and it's hard to slowly make those changes because they're slowly turning. So nonprofits like Creek and Timber and ours are a little more agile and able to fill those gaps and kind of bridge that until the government can catch up and the VA and the DOD can catch up. So that's kind of where we were coming from. From me specifically, I grew up here in Texas, South Texas. I have kind of family all over.
Where at? And
so I grew up in San Antonio.
Okay.
Graduated high school there, went to Texas A&M. Didn't do the greatest in college. Thought I was.
Well, what did you study in college?
Studied a little bit of everything, just trying to figure it out, And,
That's how I was too.
And it was like, I thought I was the smartest person in the room, and turns out you actually have to do some work, and everybody that's there is probably just as smart as you. And it was a good lesson for me. So I was in the Corps Cadets, and I actually stumbled into that. Whereas when I went to college, they're like, well, do you have, I did the orientation. They're like, do you have housing? And I'm like, no, am I supposed to apply for housing? I was just figuring this out. They're like, yeah, you were supposed to apply for that 6 months ago. We don't know if we're going to have any place for you. Well, one of the soldiers there in the Corps Cadets was standing there. He's like, well, you're guaranteed housing to join the Corps. I was like, done. So I was thinking high school ROTC, you show up, you wear a uniform once a week, and you do some stuff on the weekends, no big deal. And it was not. It's 24/7. It's a lifestyle there, and it's a culture. And like they shave your head, and it was a shock for me, but I liked it and I was good at it. And when college didn't work out for me, they're like, well, you can go to a junior college, raise your grades back up, or you can join the military. I was like, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to join the military. So I joined the Army, and I had student loans. So I was like, well, what's going to give me the biggest bonus? I like infantry. I was like, I'll do it. So 4 years infantry, and
when was that time frame?
So that was I ended up coming in 93. Toward the end of 93, delayed entry. And
was that Clinton era?
It was right around Clinton, yeah. So right in there. So, as I was going through my military career, I just needed more. I needed more of a challenge. And during when I was in the delayed entry program in San Antonio, we had done they brought in all these recruits that are waiting to ship off, to go to MEPS and ship off. And they had a Medal of Honor recipient there. And, these are those moments, and I'm sure everybody has them, where you look back in your life and you're like, I was such a moron. I was so young and just dumb. And the Medal of Honor recipient there was Roy Benavides.
Nice.
And so he comes up to me, and he's like, what you need to do is go Special Forces, be an 18 Delta, go to PA school, and go be a doctor. I was like, whatever, old man. There's some women over here I need to go chase after or something. I was 20 years old. And as I started going through my military career, I just needed more of a challenge. And I was getting honor graduate in all the Army schools, but there was nothing going on. There was no budget. It was peacetime, so I was super bored. So I needed an additional challenge. So I remember.
You said you were in infantry then?
I was.
So which unit did you end up going?
I was with 101st.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So and I loved my time there. The foundations that I learned in the infantry were just unreal. And what you learn at that, what that skill brings to the table. And so as I was moving forward, I was like, I needed more. So I was like, I'm going to try for Special Forces. 5th Special Forces Group was right down the road. I was running a sniper section for the 101st, so we'd worked with them a lot. And I was like, man, this is where I want to be. Like, these guys are out there doing it. I'm here armor-alling Humvees and
they could put their hands in their pockets. And
yeah,
that was it.
yeah. I can't grow a beard like you guys, so I couldn't hold on to that. Mine's more Team America, like patchy, Yeah. So, I was like, this is cool. They're doing stuff. So I tried out, got selected, went to Bragg, was starting the Q course, and as I was finishing the 18 Delta course, they bring us in the classroom, and towers are coming down. So, at that point, I was like, hey. There's a bigger plan here, or whatever you want, whatever you believe in. I just knew I was in the right place. And actually, when I back up to Bragg, when I was in the Q course, they have this huge classroom where you do all your basic classes, and all the Medal of Honor recipients are on the wall that were Green Berets. And I'm walking by and I look and I'm like, I know this guy, and it was Roy Benavides. Like, I had no clue that he was a Green Beret. I had no clue
Are you
of
familiar
the
with
scope.
Roy?
No.
It's he's like the guy.
But it's neat to how it all came full circle for you
Yeah.
there.
Yep. And at that point, I was like, man, he told me I should be here, and here I am. I got selected to be an 18 Delta, a Special Forces medic. Like, everything he was saying was like coming true. And
so when you're at the Special Operations Academic Facility, I think it's called the
I don't know what they call it now anymore.
when the towers came down, how much time did you have? Because I'm sure, like, as that was happening, you knew,
Yeah.
like, we're going. I mean, dudes were probably spinning up already to
Right.
kind of head over there. So what was that like? What was the excitement around the group?
So it was excitement to hurry up. And you wanted to be there. So guys that had shorter MOSs, the weapons guys, the engineers, that were at 6 months versus the Delta course, which can be a year or more, depending. Or weapons course with language like Spanish that's short too, were already out the door, and they were texting me and messaging me, and I'm like,
You're gonna miss the war. I think
you're gonna miss it. And the Delta course was so long, and I was already finishing that, but I still had Sierra language to complete, and you're just like, it's on the news, and your friends are there, and you're like, man, like, there's nothing more frustrating than knowing where you're supposed to be and learning all these skills and all this talent and then never using it. It's like being a pro athlete, and you're the fastest and the best of everything, but you never got to play. It's just super frustrating. So when I got to 10th group, they were starting to shift toward Iraq.
Was your language Russian then?
It was,
Okay.
yeah. Which is odd for me, It's like,
I was thinking. No offense, but I'm thinking 7th group here.
That's what I told them. They're like, Garza, Russian. I'm like, you just said Garza, right? In Russian, and the same line. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I never used it. We were always in the Mideast, and it's not until later in my career that it became more, with the current struggles that we're seeing now, that it became more prevalent, more able to use that. So, I got to the group, and we were off and running. Similar to you guys, and I felt like I was a little bit luckier with the group that I got. I mean, Colorado, you can't beat that. It's just an amazing place. And
back then 7th was still at Bragg, so 10th was the spot, I would imagine.
Yeah, and we were answering the call for lots of different theaters. So I got experience in the Mideast, I got experience in Africa, I got experience in Europe. And you were just coming back with these guys that had such a broad level of experience that it was kind of cool to see, and it was different. Every group has their own different personalities, so it was, I felt like I was fairly blessed for the one that I ended up with. Each one of them has their pros and cons, and each one of them will say they're the best out there. We can have that sibling rivalry all day, kind of like us and SEALs. But I was very happy with where I ended up and how I ended my career. I was incredibly happy with that.
So as soon as you get to group, so you get your team. Did you have to spend time with the B team, or did you go right to the A?
So as an 18 Delta, there's so short.
Yeah.
There's such a shortage.
Yep.
I didn't even have a senior. Most teams have a senior medic and a junior medic, a senior weapons, a junior weapons.
Okay.
And that senior kind of mentors that younger guy, and then when he moves on, he becomes a senior and he gets a junior. And it's a very cool process with how we mentor the new Green Berets coming in, because
But that wasn't in place whenever you got there?
it was in place except there was no senior.
Yeah.
So
So a
you're-
lot of times, typically, there's 12 men on an ODA. You know, that's what's supposed to have, at least stateside. When you're overseas, you get attachments and all that. The concept is you're able to do like a split team operations, right? So you've
6
got
and 6.
2 MOSs where you can have a smaller unit and be able to affect more area and be able to force multiply a little bit more efficiently.
Absolutely.
So when you actually got over there, did you go right overseas to Afghanistan, or did you do some JSETs in Europe?
Yeah,
or?
so we actually got to do a JSET in Lebanon,
Nice.
which was, we were the last before the SEALs took it over.
Mm-hmm.
So we were the first Americans back in since the bombing of the Marine barracks, and we were doing a humanitarian
that's
demining
right.
mission there, because the border between Lebanon and Syria was heavily mined. So we were teaching them how to do that, and working with their water ops as well. And then, eventually we handed that off to a sister service, and they still worked with the local military there. And then we shifted to Iraq, and so it was, we had the opportunity to do some pretty cool stuff.
Yep.
And then, Iraq was still pretty new.
So after you spend your time at SWIC, did you end up going back to a group? Or?
I did. So I made 8 while I was there, and so my time got cut short because I was using that as leverage to get back to the team, and so got back to my group and was assigned an operational detachment. ODA is what we call them. Most people know us as A teams, like from the movies and the TV show.
Right.
So I was assigned an A team, and to me, God, it's like the epitome of your career. Like, you are a team sergeant, the most senior guy running a special forces team. Like, that's where it was. And I'm going to bleed into a little bit of story now, and it'll kind of answer some questions later on with the foundation. I had a pretty severe back injury, and was doing everything I could to not lose my team.
So while you were a team
While I
daddy,
was-
you
yeah.
had a, okay.
So, with most of us, we have back issues, and, you have the pain radiating down your legs, and I couldn't sit through a dinner, I couldn't sit through a movie, I couldn't do anything. The pain was so bad, like it was affecting my relationships. And so I'm sitting in front of the command sergeant major, the battalion command sergeant major, and he's like checking off his list, doing his initial, he's the one that slates the team sergeants. Is there anything physically that's going to keep you from running this team? And my leg is bouncing because I'm in so much pain. I'm like, nope, I'm good.
Rock solid.
And I was just like, end this meeting so I can stand up because I'm in so much pain right now. And you start to, the more, the broader you get and the more I do foundation work, we were all in pain. Everybody's in pain. And everybody has something, and we're hiding it, just like I did in front of that sergeant major. Like, nope, I'm good.
As a team sergeant, I mean, you only get 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
I mean, sometimes you might have,
Yeah, 2.5.
a rare situation
Yeah.
where you'll get a little bit more time. But yeah, I mean, I would do the same thing as you.
We all do it.
Yeah, because you might be able to come back later and get that team, but maybe not. So,
Well, and then, the non-commissioned officer career path is so rigid, whereas the officers are a little more fluid, and they go and do, degree completions
work in
and
DC.
and they work as an attaché here or there, and it's all part of their career plan. Had I got a third year, now I'm behind my peers. Had I got a third year on a team, now you're behind your peers, but you got a third year. Had I waited to take that team, I would have been an E8 sitting somewhere in a staff somewhere while my peers are on teams moving up in promotion. So it puts you behind, and it's just where you want to be. Like, if that's your goal and you're like, man, this is the place where I want to be, there was nothing that was going to stand in the way. And my first year as a team sergeant was horrible. I was a horrible team sergeant. And I'll admit that. And I'll tell the guys, because I was always in pain. I couldn't do PT with the guys. I couldn't ruck march. I couldn't do any of the training because I was always in pain. So I was finding ways to I just got to work on this concept. I got to do this. I got to do that. Finding all these reasons. And if you're not leading from the front on an SF team, they will eat you alive. Yeah. It is brutal waters to be in. And you see that look on their face when they're leaving for PT, and you're like, I just got to finish this email or whatever, finding excuses to not be out there. And it was affecting me mentally and obviously physically. What it all culminated in is a ruptured disc where I was paralyzed from the waist down because I put it off for so long. had surgery, and while I was on the team, got myself back into shape, and now I was off and running. And my last year and a half on a team, I crushed it. Like, this is who I really am. I was having these limiting factors because I was too proud to admit that I was hurt, that I was hurting. And again, another one of those lessons where you look back and you're like, man, pride was just kicking my ass. And just making, had we deployed during that time period, and we didn't deploy till after I was better. Probably because I was such a weak team sergeant at that time that the command's looking down at like ranking their teams.
Yeah. Your team would have gotten a crap gig.
Oh, yeah. And had we deployed, like, they're expecting you to lead. And I wasn't functioning at a high level that I should be, that I needed to be. It put people in harm's way, and...
I mean, it's not that rare, though. I mean, every team sergeant that I ever had were broke. Absolutely. I think maybe it was like my second or third team sergeant. 2 hip replacements. Already he was like 40. He had all kinds of stuff wrong with him, but I mean, he was still trucking. But yeah, once you walk around the mountains for a long time and a lot of sustained operations, you can. Yeah. So, back surgery was successful-ish.
Yeah.
And then, so you do your time. Did you do some deployments with that?
I did.
Team?
So I had 12 trips overall, all over. When we like 10th group, we went from theater to theater. Mm-hmm. So, when I was in SWIC, we shifted to AFRICOM AOR. So we did some trips to Africa, and then they shifted us back, and we were splitting Afghanistan and Europe, and Europe started flaring up, so there was more Europe. So a lot of, again, that well-rounded, I felt well-rounded. But then you have guys that come out of your group, they're like, I got 8, 10 deployments all to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
All combat. I'm like, there's no way you don't have issues, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. Yep, I'm good. I'm like, all right. Go sell that to somebody else.
Yeah. So do you stay at group, or did you go up to a J shop, or
so
what did you have your team do?
After my team sergeant time, I picked up a first sergeant position at a TSOC, SOC North, so it was just down the road. And for listeners, the globe is cut into what we call theaters, these big chunks, and you have generals that are in charge of these huge pieces, like Europe and Africa and the Pacific and North America.
Okay.
So you have like NORAD Northcom that's in charge of, and that's their area of responsibility. And then all of them have a special operations command that mirrors them. So I went to a special operations command where I was the first sergeant. So you're not really doing policy per se. You're not, oh, this is the way we're going to handle the border, or this is the way we're going to handle this terrorist element. You're more the day-to-day function of the command. But you're dealing with general level officers and staffs that are full-board colonels and some huge egos. It's like being, the coach of the Lakers or something. Like you just have this amazing talent, huge egos, and you're trying to balance it all. And that's where I really started to see the value in like the family resiliency and kind of taking a step back and taking a knee, as we say a lot. A lot of guys come there to take a knee to kind of get away from the like you were saying, like it's combat. You come back, you train, you got a month or two with your family, and you're back again. That op tempo was so heavy that it was starting to really wear on guys, and I could see it there. And so that's where I really started to get to the idea of like, we need to do something. We have the ability, we have the personnel, we have the minds to be able to do something and really have an effect, at least on our community. And that's where the ideas really started coming for the nonprofit. So,
yeah. So then, what year time frame is this roughly?
So I was at the TSOC like 16 to like 18.
Mm-hmm.
Right
Is that where you finished out then over there?
No, so from there I picked up E9 really well.
So after you picked up, you go back to 10th Group, and you take a company in 4th Battalion then, or?
I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
So yeah, and I enjoyed my time there. It was a company where guys have to get selected to come into. So the team, guys and girls, and the team I had, because of you're going through additional screening to get into these units, was incredibly high functioning. So you're not dealing with a brand new Green Beret coming in from the Q course. You're dealing with seasoned people that know what they're doing, know how to do their job. So it wasn't super stressful for me, other than we had a lot of out and up stuff that we had to deal with, across not just a group, but with other commands and stuff like that. For Special Forces Command and USASOC and up. So that was really the biggest challenge. But making sure that, and at this point again, I had it really in my mindset of I'd seen those guys at the TSOC, I'd seen why they needed to take a knee, and that they really weren't resetting. They were being put in a position to reset and kind of what we call clear away the residue of 5, 6, 8, 10 years of combat or whatever, however long they'd been in, and I see this in high functioning people all the time, And my guess is you two are probably very similar. Both of you have really good outlets for being able to kind of reset, but you'll see high performance people that are like, all right, hey, you need to take a day off, and they'll go take a day off and they'll just work from home. They don't know how to just detach and reset. And they don't understand the benefit of doing that. And I saw it at the TSOC level. Like incredibly high functioning people that were put in a position where they needed to reset, set some family time, reconnect with their family, and they just weren't doing it because they didn't know how. So at a Sergeant Major level, I would walk into what I called the bullpen, and you have guys working on all kinds of stuff, different levels, different countries, you name it. Hey, what are you working on? Well, I was working on X, Y, and Z, and okay, cool. Hey, when's that due? Well, it's due next week, but I wanted to, and I'll put their computer down. I'm like, go home. Like, it's 5 o'clock already. Why are you still here?
Shut it down.
Go home. And they just look at you like, what? Like, look, we're going to send you away for long periods of time away from your family. If you're not taking advantage of the time you have now, then you're wrong. And if you won't do it, then I'm going to make sure you do it. So you're going to leave here with no computer. You're going to leave here with no work. You're going to go home. You're going to spend some time with your family, have dinner. You're not going to come in till 9 o'clock the next day. You're going to have breakfast with your kids. You're going to go to school, take them to school, and then come to work when you're done. Like, you have to make them do it because, and Eric can tell you, we'll push and push and push until you burn out.
In between deployments, we were forced to take like 2 weeks to leave. Sometimes you get a little bit more right after deployment and then right before deployment, just to have family time. I mean, which is great. It's a good notion, but especially a third group, they tried with the resources that they had to allow people to detach. Like there's always family getaway type stuff, marriage retreats, I think they were called, all that. But the op tempo is so high that it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like you could spend the entire dwell time between a deployment with your family, and you might still be just as messed up with it.
Because you don't know how.
Yeah.
Well,
and you don't want to turn off either because you're going right back.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to stay on.
Exactly.
And so when you're training, you're doing all that stuff. Unfortunately, there's a lot of adrenaline, but there's a lot of lulls in when you're deployed. But it takes a toll on your brain when you go from 0 to 100 constantly, over and over and over in an extended period of time.
And now it's such a reflex for us that it's hardwired, physically hardwired into us.
Yep.
Which there's programs now that you can they call it pruning. So you have your fight or flight, and our fight or flight hypervigilance is incredibly, literally overgrown, where we've sprouted more nerves to support that constant state of hypervigilance. Mm-hmm. And we don't know how to turn it off. So, I can sit here having a conversation, calm, something happens that irritates me, and I'm not annoyed, I'm angry, I'm action, I'm there.
Level 10
It just jumps. Yeah. And this was something when I was going through the Warrior Recovery Center trying to fix this, that they just didn't know how. They couldn't quite wrap around. So they give you the PTSD. Well, you must have PTSD. That's the easy button, and it's not necessarily, it doesn't fit for necessarily what Eric's describing. So there are programs out there that'll kind of help, they call it pruning, where they kind of numb some of that to help you balance out, and then help you, then from there you have to do the work to kind of get yourself right. But that hypervigilance and that it's
Well, it comes in many forms through the pruning, like so stelloganglion shot
That's
is a
what I was
form
talking
of
about,
that, in
Stella's
order
a
to
big
really
one.
numb different parts of you that might be affected. But when you're back home and you're not getting that type of, instant, I guess you could say gratification, depending on how twisted you are. But you turn to drugs and alcohol
Yeah.
and
External
different
stimulators.
risky activities in order to, get that jolt of adrenaline or whatever you want to call it. And that ultimately just leads people into needing organizations.
Well, so
right, to help out
there's
with.
actually been studies that have done, and there's some really good books out there. Rise of Superman is one of them, and there's a second part to that called, what is it? Rise of Superman and the Art of the Impossible. So there's a third one before that that doesn't necessarily apply so much, but they talk about this flow state. They talk about pro athletes get into this flow state where no matter what you do, it's going in the hoop. No matter where they throw it, you're catching it. You're in the zone. All right? Well, when that happens, you have all these neurotransmitters that are dumped into your body at one time. So emergencies, people are like, everything was in slow motion. Well, there's a reason for that. Because your brain shuts off things that don't matter and focuses on one thing, survival. So it's taking in information so fast that everything else seems slow motion. Well, all these neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins are all dumped into your body when you're in flow state, and they're highly addictive, incredibly addictive. Operators overseas are going into flow when they're hitting a target, and then they're coming off, and then they're coming on, and then they're coming off. And then you come home and you want that feeling again.
Yeah.
The only thing that replicates those things are drugs, alcohol, risk, sex, all these things, and now you're wondering why these guys are chasing it. Because it's literally an addiction to what you've been doing as a career for so long. So educating them on what's going on is the first step. It is just horrible.
Yeah, I mean, and kind of your question there, he's exactly right. The issue is there's not like one location where you can go and experience all the different treatments. Right when I got out, I had this grand plan of buying a bunch of land and making this ranch.
Yeah, me too.
Right, where you could do anything from smoking weed, dropping psilocybin to
Yeah.
stelloganglion shots to ketamine treatment to not so fringe stuff as well, the actual accepted stuff as well. One spot, and you spend like a month there, 2 months, and you find out what works for you. Hey, this worked, this didn't work. Okay, now that we know that this is what you react to more properly, then that's good. And to this day, I don't think anyone's been able to have one location in order to do that.
There's places coming close.
Yeah.
They're getting there, but again, it's a slow move. And then I don't know about you, but I actually know I do because we talked about it earlier. Like almost all of us, none of us want to be on narcotics. None of us want to be on medication for the rest of our lives. We feel like there's a way to reset this and do it in a responsible way that you can just move on with life as I wouldn't say normal. That's kind of a stretch, and what's your definition of normal? Each one of us has our own different definition of what that is. But you're functioning back to where you are comfortable as a citizen of this country, as a human. You're back to that. And you talked about transition when we first did the intro. That's a big problem. Guys walking away from that world. What do I take with me? I'm a warrior. What do I take with me? Is hypervigilance is that going to help me at Amazon?
You got to reinventing yourself
Yeah.
is the biggest problem.
What do you cut away? What do you keep? And at what level do you keep those things? I still go to the range because I love that warrior spirit. I don't ever want to lose that. But it doesn't always fit in the civilian world. The way we talk to each other in the military doesn't always fit in the civilian. There's memes all over the place about civilian, military language and translating them into, civilian speak.
Right.
Like, oh, that was great, Susan. But
Yeah.
what he actually said was super crude. But what he meant was, you did a great job. I'm proud of you. That's not how we talk to each other.
Everyone thinks the tab and what you've done overseas is your identity, right?
Yep.
But in actuality, your identity is under that, and that's what got you to get that tab in the first place. That's
The color of your hat doesn't matter. The tab on your shoulder doesn't matter. But it's so ingrained in our culture, we tattoo it on our bodies.
Yeah.
It's all over our cars. We wear shirts saying, hey, I want to be low key, but you're wearing your team shirt everywhere because you're super proud of that. You should be, you know? But when you step away from that, it doesn't change who you are as a person. Now you just need to adjust those skills to what are you going to contribute now? The biggest gap that guys have is sense of purpose. They're spoiled when they're in service. Your sense of purpose is tied to your paycheck, is tied to your work. It's all one thing.
I got injured, right? And then it was a surgery at Womack. A surgeon paralyzed my arm during surgery. And so I just picked up E7, and I was like, crap, like now what? And I knew it was done. I had to get brachial plexus nerve graft surgery at UT Southwestern every year, and I knew I was done. And at that point forward, I was like, well, now what? Now what, man? Like, what do I've suffered with that identity crisis, you know, even while I was in. Luckily, they gave me a training slot, and I was able to still be semi-operational even through that medical process. But my biggest thing was, okay, now who am I, right? And it took me, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
You know, it took me years of just trying to find out where I can achieve that sense of purpose again. And you also need to cope with those times are gone. They were incredible. Mm-hmm. And you can't just keep holding on like, hey, I'm going to experience this again. You're not. You're not going to do it. Yeah. Find that joy somewhere else. You know, find that thing that makes you happy in a different segment of life.
Or else you become that 30-year-old who shows up to the homecoming in his Letterman jacket.
Yep.
You're like, wow, you never progressed past high school football hero. Star. Yeah.
So before we go on, let's go ahead and wrap up your career. So how'd that end? And then if you can explain to us where you were like, listen, I'm doing Special Forces Foundation. Like, let's knock this thing out.
So they're kind of tied to each other. So when I was at the TSOC as a first sergeant, and I was seeing, these guys that needed a legit reset. They needed a way to, when they're taking a knee, to actually recover. And I was telling you guys about the residue. The only thing that speaks to special operations and special forces guys is weapons and performance. So hey, get your head right, because it'll make you a better Green Beret. Bigger, faster, stronger, better shot, better husband, better dad if you fix your head. If you tell them that that you're broken and we're gonna fix you and I'm so sorry, that stigma, they're done. They're like, I don't want anything to do with it. You frame it as far as performance, oh yeah, how can I do that? Guys will do unreal stuff to make themselves better, like performance-wise, but they neglect probably the most important thing, which is their head. So the one we use for them, the analogy we use is the weapon, which is fitting because we're sitting on a range and there's people shooting next door. So, like, hey man, when you get in a firefight overseas, when you're on the range and you come back to your team house, your team room, what's the first thing priorities of work? What do you have to do? You clean your weapon. You take it apart, you clean away all the carbon, you wipe all the grease and oil off, you put it back, you check each piece to make sure nothing's wrong with them, you put them together, you do a functions check, light coat oil, you store it. Okay, why? So it doesn't break. So that the next time I'm in a firefight, it will not fail on me. Your head's no different. When you go through something and when you go through the things that we've seen, we are a different animal, whereas we don't necessarily, we in the special operations, because we've gone through so much selection, where you see things different and things that normally some people struggle with, we don't. And I thought it used to bother me for a long time, and now it doesn't anymore, because I understand it now. And it actually took a performance psych from one of our units at Bragg to come in and like explain this to us. And it was like, like the light came on. So, if you don't take care of that, when you need it the most, you will shut down. It will fail you at the moment when it's the most critical, because it's under so much stress. You're in a firefight, that weapon's under a lot of stress. If you haven't taken care of it, it's gonna break on you. And then what? Same thing with your mind. And like I was telling you guys at lunch, I've seen people in the middle of a firefight, in the middle of an op, break, lock and clear weapons, put it away, and be like, I'm done. When I looked back as the medic, like the signs were there. We just didn't know. We didn't know how to do it. We didn't know how to fix it. We didn't know what to do. And this was early in the war, and this dude's an amazing individual. Like, he's gone on and done great things. It had nothing to do with him being weak. It had everything to do with maintenance, taking care of himself. So I was seeing this at the TSOC level. And because I'd seen it operationally, I'm like, man, these guys are taking a knee. I get it, but they're not resetting. They're here late at night working on stuff that really doesn't matter. What's the font on the PowerPoint look like? And they're all twisted up about all this dumb stuff when they should be home. Secondly, the guys that did go home, their families are not used to being around them. And now they're relearning what it's like to be a dad, to be a husband. And it was causing a ton of stress at home. So
They
you
actually had the wives would actually talk to, it's like they'd have a briefing, right? And they used to tell us, like, when we come back from a deployment, they're like, listen,
Yeah.
you don't own it. You're not the boss.
Nope.
Go back, just do what you're told. Don't try and inform these new rules, because while you were gone, they established their own policies and procedures and all that on how they live. And then you come in and you try and, be in control and all that, and then
Like,
it's just...
that's not how you do
divorce
that. This is
central.
how you do it. She's
Yeah.
like, I've been doing this for 6 months without you.
Yeah.
Don't tell me.
Yep.
And she's already stressed because she's been doing it by herself. So for us to come in and be like, oh, let me fix all of this. You're
Yep.
doing it all wrong. Wrong answer.
Compound fracture. Yeah.
So now you're not just coming back from a deployment. Now, at least before you had 2 months of walking around and trying to make sure you didn't do anything wrong. You don't want to disrupt it too much because you're going again, and then she has to reestablish systems all over again. Not only that, but she's watching the news, and maybe she doesn't watch the news. She's drowning herself in everyday life because she's waiting for that knock on the door. Like what our families go through, we never really, I didn't fully understand it until later on when I started seeing it from outside looking in and seeing what other families were going through. And, so I started to see this. So there was guys that were, that had been, their convoy had been hit. One guy fell out of the gun truck and the rear gun truck ran over him, and like this stuff, he was super injured and he was always in pain. So I started putting in requests and building programs to help families. And it wasn't the forced ones where okay, if you want to go skiing, you got to sit through these 15 briefings before you can hit the slopes. Hey guys, what kind of program would you want to see? What would help you get closer to your family? Well, if we could just do X, Y, and Z, okay, let's do that. Instead of forcing it down from the top, let's ask the guys as a family what would speak to them, what would help them the most. And those are the programs we built. So the Navy SEAL Foundation does amazing work. And it was a joint command, so the SEAL Foundation was always helping us fund these. So we're like, okay, let's reach out to other organizations. There's Wounded Warrior out there. There's a ton of other nonprofits out there. And we're just getting a lot of nothing. And I was super frustrated with it. I went home and was venting to my wife. My wife's an attorney, and she's on her computer. And she pulls up their 990s, their taxes, and I started going through and seeing how these nonprofits were utilizing money. And it just made it worse for me. That just frustrated me even more. And then I'm venting more, and she's still on her computer, and I'm like, are you even listening to me? And she turns the IRS page over, and she's like, I just filled in an application for you to start your own nonprofit. What do you want to call it?
Wow.
And I was just sitting, I didn't know what to say. I was like, yes, I want to do that. So we started it small, thinking, hey, guy's gone, and a pipe freezes, a water heater goes out, car breaks, we can help here and there.
So you started the foundation when you were active?
Yep.
Okay.
And so two reasons. One, obviously I was still active, but I liked the fact that the Joint Ethical Regulation didn't allow me to take pay. That there's actual laws on the books to say I couldn't get paid. And I'm like, okay, so when we started doing this, we looked at the big organizations and said, okay, what are the pitfalls? When the money started coming in, where did they start to fall? Where did it...
Pause real quick, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't see the lights on. I was like, okay, cool. All right, go ahead.
So we started looking at, okay, where are their pitfalls? In their procedures, in our bylaws, what can we do to protect ourselves to keep us from falling into these traps? Because it is a trap. When money really starts coming in, it's this progression of we'll just pay him a little bit of this, and maybe I'll just bump up to Economy Plus, and the next thing you know, it's first class, and next thing you know, it's a private plane. It's just a slow progression. And so we started writing into the bylaws how we were going to do this, that we wanted to be a primary primarily voluntary organization, that we wanted to be active duty led with Green Berets and Green Berets families running it, or people tied to the tribe. So it doesn't have to be family, but that extended family like we talk about, and who had a vested interest in the mission of what we were doing. So we built those in. So an example is we built in term limits. So once I retire, and I've retired now, I have 2 years where I can continue to serve as the director, but I have to hand it to an active duty guy. Where did 2 years come from? And you can help with this. That first year when you're out, you still know all the guys. You're still texting them. Maybe you barbecue, maybe you hang out. Then it starts to slowly go away as they start to go doing pre-mission training.
The new guys are filtering.
New guys come in that you don't know. And then that second year, it almost completely drops off. You don't know who's there anymore. You don't know where they're at. You may not hear from them at all. So for me, as a director, to understand what the guys in the wire are going through, what they need, what the current warfighter needs, was slim to none. I maybe get invited to, a ball, or a grand opening, or a family event, or something like that. But you're not in the wire anymore. And I didn't want to be the leader who's like deciding on programs of what we're going to do. We're going to give these families and these operators to help them heal, not knowing what they're going through. Like that's where we get these crap programs that we've had for the past 20 years of force feeding us all this stuff, because they're designed by people who've never been there, or if they were there, they were there years ago.
Is there any other nonprofits that are built that way, where it's like active duty run? The only ones I can really think of, and I don't know if they're nonprofits, but the Combat Diver Association and the Military Freefall Association.
Right.
I know those are the run. I think the schoolhouses do that, but those are the only ones that I can think of.
So, and those are associations, so they're more like brotherhoods. They're more fraternal. It's not necessarily
It's not like a 501c3.
Right. So that was the biggest factor. We put in, we all travel by joint travel regulation. So government fare, aircraft, government's, hey, what's the government rate on this seat? That's what you're getting. What's the government rate on this hotel room? That's what you're getting. If I'm flying a Gold Star, first class. If I'm flying a wounded guy, first class. But for us, when you come on board, you understand. Now, for me, I'll buy an economy seat as per our regulation, and then I pay out of pocket if I want to upgrade. Nothing wrong with that. If I want more leg room or stuff like that, as I've gotten older, and as my career and like everything going on with TBI, like tight spaces really start to bother me, which I don't know why, but I'm working on it. So that's okay. But we wanted to maximize that money going back to those families that need it.
Yep.
And we wanted people that were in the organization to be here because they wanted to change things, they wanted to fix things, they wanted to make it better. They're doing it for the benevolence and not because we're paying them $80,000 a year. Are we naive to think that we're never going to pay for talent? No.
But
So-
you're staying at a La Quinta if you're traveling. No offense to La Quinta, I love La Quintas. But
Well, we'll stay wherever. We collect points, so we collect points as a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And then we use those points to pay for people traveling.
Yeah.
So either staff traveling, use the points to pay for the room, so it's saving money, or Green Berets traveling to an event. We had a family fly to Hawaii for a first group guy who was killed in Afghanistan. And through donors, we pay for all the flights, hotels, rental cars, everything using donor points.
It's
Not
amazing.
a dollar.
Nothing out of pocket.
Every donor pitched in their frequent flyer miles, their Marriott points, everything, and we paid for everything with just points.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So creative ways of doing things like that, where a donor can be like, oh, what, I just give you my flyer points? Like, sure, I don't have to write a check. Like, there's so many different ways you can help, and there's so many people out there that want to help.
Right.
You hear it all the time, like, we all want to help, we just don't know how. Well, help us. We know how.
Yeah, so for people that don't understand what the Special Forces Foundation is, the capabilities and what you're focusing on, obviously it's kind of in the title, but can you go a little bit more about the foundation, what you have planned coming up, what your main focuses are?
Sure. So we're pretty broad in scope, and we've got some early criticism about how broad our scope is because we'll pretty much do anything. if it's ethically sound, legally sound, we'll do it. And people are like, you're shaking off too much. The difference is that the demographic we're supporting is not the National Cancer Society. We're not treating millions of cancer patients. We're not treating, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of veterans that are out there. We are treating a very specific set of warriors who, if you look at the numbers coming out of SOCOM, have done the majority of the fighting that's on the ground. That's just been a heavy burden on Special Forces. Eric can speak to it, very specifically. Whereas, the conventional military has definitely been out there, and we love everything that they provide for us. But we're typically the ones going out the wire. Typically, not always, But you have these incredibly brave soldiers. That's an E4 specialist driving a supply truck to bring him Gatorade. To me, that takes some balls. To join the military post 9/11 alone says a lot about that person anyway. Now to get in a truck that is booby trapped the entire way to bring us MREs, there's value in all of that. We are small that we can't support that entire. So we stick to what we know, which is our tribe, our community. So we'll do anything. We've done anything from buy Gold Star's new cars because they need it. We had a Gold Star family that had four daughters, four girls. I believe they were how old were they when they were? 7, 5, and twins, 2-year-old twins. When Will died, and the Gold Star came to us, and we came to her first. We wait for the whirlwind to leave because initially when a guy dies overseas, everybody comes out of the woodwork. Here's this, here's that, let me give you this, let me give you that. And almost none of it pans out. That was super frustrating for us. So we wait for the dust to settle, and we come in and sit down at a table. Say, this is who we are. I knew your husband. Give us the priority of your needs, and we'll start working on them. And she laid it out for us. And we're like, okay, let's start with number one. She had, the kids could fit in the SUV, but if they wanted to go for groceries with the stroller from the twins, there's no room for groceries. She's like, Will would follow me, and we would go together and do all this together. I can't do that anymore. Okay, so you need a bigger SUV. So it's not going to be tomorrow, but give us time, and we will get it done. And we did. Simple things like that, or guys want to travel to a memorial for a fallen brother. We'll help with that. Guys need help doing career progression. We can help with that. You name it. Behavioral mental health is the biggest one right now. Is our number one priority.
So are you facilitating treatment then?
So that's the other thing that keeps us lean. We will facilitate some of it, but for most of it, we partner with good organizations doing good things, and we'll vet them. Okay, Stella is another example. Creek and Timber, another example. Okay, these are things that are benefit to the guys, but we don't have the staff, nor do we want the staff to be able to run hunts. We don't have the doctors on staff to be able to do a ganglion block. So we find all these different organizations that are doing that work, and then we fund it. So all we need to do is raise money and then vet these organizations and vet the need. Hey, this guy's, an individual's asking for X, Y, or Z. Okay, is that ethical? Is it legal? And is there a bigger pot of money that does this? Hey, the VA offers this. The DOD offers this. Have you looked in these first before we utilize our donor money? Because our donors work hard for what they have. And if we're not respectful to those donors, and if the only time they hear from us through the year is like, hey, it's that time of year, where's my check? That's the wrong way to run a nonprofit.
Well, that's a good caveat to kind of speak about how the Special Forces Foundation and Creek and Timber Legacy met. You know what I mean? What's your future plans? What are you guys trying to achieve? So how does the Special Forces Foundation and Creek and Timber, how do you guys operate with each other?
That's a great question. We find the guys who need help reintegrating back into civilian lifestyle, and we take them on therapeutic outdoor adventures. So what we do is, if there's veterans or first responders or families of the fallen or critically diagnosed youth that could really benefit for some wilderness therapy or a good trip to say thank you, we get partnered and we take them on a hunt, take them elk hunting, get them out in the outdoors where they can relax, talk about what's important to them, talk about what's going on in their life, and just listen and provide an opportunity for those guys to have the camaraderie that they might not have at home, or that kind of replaces that high or that teamwork or that that camaraderie that they've been used to and that they're looking for. And so that's our big deal, is we use wilderness therapy and the healing powers of the outdoors. So we've got all sorts of terrific things on the schedule this year, whether it be golf tournaments or fly fishing or waterfowl hunting, turkey hunting, all types of terrific stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I know it works. I think initially when I first got out, there was hunts offered and all that, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. It just, maybe I didn't think it was for me. Like there was someone that could benefit more from it, and then I didn't want it to be some preachy, what I mean.
Yep.
But the hunts that I was able to go on from other organizations, it really did help me to get out and actually hunt. And the wilderness therapy, I've never heard that term before, but that is exactly what it is.
It's a real deal.
Have you guys any Green Berets from Special Forces Foundation gone on a
So that's how we met them. So a couple of our board members and went on a hunt with the guys from Creek and Timber, and then brought them to one of our golf tournaments. And I got to meet them there, and now that I'm living in the local area, I got to deal with them more. And one of the beauties about, and you're right, there are a lot of organizations out there that do this, and we partner with a lot of them that do good work. There's with the need that's out there, it would be very difficult for them to be able to support everybody. But they're really good at what they do. And one of the things that I really liked about what you guys do is you're like, hey, it's not just therapeutic to be out in the open. Like there's a huge benefit to that wide openness and that quiet, that peacefulness of especially somebody that's their mind's constantly moving and they're in that state all the time. But there's benefit that you guys will sit around in the evening around a fire and just talk. And if you're around like-minded people, that helps. I get questions a lot like, well, the Greatest Generation in World War II, like what they saw and coming home, and we don't see a lot. It was still there, but not as much as they're more quiet about what they did, and they're not as it didn't seem like it affected them as much, which is not true. It affected them just as much, but they're on a boat coming home for 2 weeks. However, it took at least a week to 2 weeks to come by boat, or maybe at least a week to come home. They're on a boat with like-minded people, decompressing and talking. I've run an op switching out with fifth group. Okay, you've done your right seat, left seat ride, and you're switching out. Okay, all of our stuff's loaded. All right, that was your handoff target. We're gonna go get on an aircraft, go home. You pop an Ambien, you're off the plane, and you're going to soccer. Like it's like that.
Wow.
Yep.
So guys need that decompression, and that's where your programs help. And then putting them around like-minded people that allow them to talk it out, and spend some time quiet, having a good time, and just enjoying and saying, okay, this is nice. This is
Yeah. So where's the foundation heading?
So what we do with Creek and Timber, what we've offered is like, hey, how can we help get guys to these hunts? If guys are coming from out of state, can we cover travel? What can we help? They're fairly self-sufficient. Where the hunts, they have a good donor network and a good network of support. Where the hunt itself is handled. A lot of times it's just getting guys there. So we can step in there and help. Absolutely happy to do that. Doing co-events with them as well is a big future thing for us. For us as a foundation, we're growing pretty fast, and we've just we're adapting our organization to make sure that we can still support and stay true to our values of where we were and what we started. Making sure that the people coming in as we grow understand what that means to be part of this organization, understands that, hey, you're gonna give a little bit of yourself to be able to help the greater good here and contribute and be part of this. We want to just keep growing. What we don't want to do is to start raising money for the sake of raising money, where you're just raising some insane amount of money. We want to make sure we're living within our means, but taking care of the people. And let's be honest, we have to forward think what's the next conflict, and be prepared for that. Because there will be. And history shows us anything. It's just a history of conflict. And when you're living in a country like this, everybody wants to see you fall. And everybody wants to blame us for their problems, and we become a target. If we didn't have the greatest military in the world, maybe we'd be speaking German, or something else. Japanese. Who knows?
How do you lead them to water? I mean, you're right. It's not uncommon to, for all of these guys to be struggling. I mean, people need help. So whenever you pick up on traits or something like that from somebody that said that, hey man, you need to get in touch with this guy. Is that what you say, or how do you coach them up or gas them up to say, you know what, maybe I will see about going on a fishing trip, or maybe I should reach out to a professional who handles stuff that I've been dealing with. How do you get them to that point? Because a lot of times you get them up to that point and then it's well, I'll do it next week, or maybe later if something bad happens or something like that. How do you get them to basically take that step?
So for us, we had to understand, when you're dealing with a different demographic. Yours is broader, so you're going to have some different needs in there that are not necessarily that are unique to what you guys do. For us, because again we're not the travel agent trying to sell a trip that we've never been on. I can say, look, this was my struggles. This is what I was doing to my family. This is what I was doing, to my career, to myself. This is what stress and all these things were doing to me. And they'll see that in themselves. And then it's like, okay, here's some programs that help. Tell me where you want. Tell me which one of these speaks to you. And then sometimes you kind of got to, give them a little push and make sure that they're following through. However, we also had to learn that you can't force them. You're not going to save everybody. And that, especially with the demographic that you guys deal with, which is broader, not all veterans created equal. I told Dustin this, and you could probably speak to this as well. Not all of them are created equal. Some of them just like the attention. Some of them just like the free stuff. And the challenge for you is weeding that out of who's here legitimately to get better and who's here just for they're addicted to sympathy and attention. And they'll continue to spiral no matter what you do for them, because if you heal them and you make them better, they're not getting the attention anymore. People are feeling sorry for them and offering them free stuff. Dustin wanted to do a full hunt where they walk in and there's a locker full of gear that they go home with. You may never see that dude again. You just gave them all that, have events leading up to that where you're vetting guys that are serious about getting better. But you have to come to terms with you're not going to save them all. You're just not. And two, and I tell companies this all the time, is stop coddling your veterans. Don't coddle them. You're creating a demographic that's
And the real ones that want treatment don't want to be coddled.
no. So I did a coaching session with a construction company, and they brought their veterans group in, and they were having issues with their veterans group about I want this and I want this and where's my special treatment. And so when I went in there, here's my resume, this is who I am, and it carries weight. Very few people are you going to walk in that's going to have a resume that can compare military-wise to what we've achieved. And in the military, the structure is very clear, and they understand that. So you're setting the table right there. Okay, this is who I am. And I just sat there waiting to see if anybody wants to step up and say anything. And I started with, this company didn't hire you because you're a charity, because you're broken. They hired you because you're capable. They hired you because you can make this company better. So stop asking for free stuff. Stop complaining about everything. You should be focused on how you can utilize the skills that you learned in the military to make this company better. And they would pair them with executives to help mentor these veterans. And the executives, civilians, like mouth open, like, well, what just happened? You know? And I wasn't as nice when I said it. You know, I was speaking very military, like, pull your head out of your ass. You're embarrassing us all by this type of behavior. And this is not who you are. It wasn't who you were in service, and somehow you've become this.
Yep.
And then the executive asked, like, okay, well, if I'm having a problem with a veteran, they're always in the back of their mind, like, what if he has a PTSD episode or something like that? I'm like, so? What if he has a breakdown? And you're not his therapist. You're his employer. Well, what do? Bring him in, tell him what he did wrong, tell him how to fix it, basic counseling, what your role in fixing this is and what his role in fixing this is, and move him out. And what if he doesn't listen? Fire him? Like, they just can't, because they're so used to, like, coddling these guys and girls, and that's not the way the military is at all. Very candid, to the point. If you're not doing your job, move.
Yeah, they weren't
Don't have to be
coddled in the
PC.
military, so why would you coddle them when they're outside of it?
Right.
I did a lot of legislative work in Colorado, and we passed a bill to not tax retirement in Colorado, state tax, trying to compete. because-
Recently, too, right?
it was a couple of years ago.
Okay, yeah.
Because they're hemorrhaging talent to Texas, to
Yeah.
Florida.
Well, one of the reasons I said not going to Colorado is because of taxing on
Yeah.
retirement money.
Right. People want to stay in Colorado, but they can have a better living in other states. And I told the state, like, hey, if you want to compete, you need to because you're losing talent, like good talent. We retire at a young age with a lot of benefit to any company that's out there. So we passed that bill. We passed another one to accept certifications for spouses. So if you PCS to Colorado and your wife's a teacher, her certification transfers over. She doesn't have to retake a test and pay more money.
Yes.
Well, so they hit me up and they're like, we want to do they have their Amber Alert, they have their Silver Alert, kids and elders. They wanted to do a Green Alert for a veteran in crisis. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. If you want to continue to create a divide between veterans and the civilian population, bring out this right here. Because in their mind, every one of them, when they meet us, they just think that we're broken. They're like, oh, this guy's some poor guy. Something's wrong with him. He's broken. We're not broken. We're adapting. And we're figuring that out, and we will. But we're an incredible asset to our communities, to our country still. And that's where guys need to focus on. Is how can I use the skills that I've learned to continue to be benefit to my company, to my community, to my country, somewhere, find that purpose. They're not, and I tell guys, you're not the first guy that had to take a job to put food on the table and find their passion somewhere else.
Yep.
People do it every day. And guess what? That's going to be you. You know?
Yeah.
You're in a great community here, the culture here, like it's very in tune with who we are, but there's still something missing. You're still not around Green Berets every day. So you're adapting to that, and you were telling me about charity work and things you were doing like that. That's what guys need to be looking for. How you can go volunteer to do dog training if you're a dog handler. You can work with children. You can work with a nonprofit helping vets. And a big benefit to guys like us is helping those nonprofits like you. Hey, this guy is not invested. You're wasting hard money on people that aren't invested. And I told Dustin, I'm like, there's easy ways to do this. You can put Eric, hey, this is who Eric is. He's coming to this hunt. And you'll see guys drop off because they know they're not there for the right reasons, and they know he'll call them out. Put me on there. Say, I'm coming to this hunt. Hey, we're going to have a guest of Sergeant Major retired, and you'll see guys drop off because they're not invested. They know that if they go there and it's just a bunch of civilians, they can tell tall tales and how spin these stories of feel sorry for me, and you guys will just keep shelling it out because nobody knows any different.
Right.
So for the people that really could benefit from your organization in partnership with Creek and Timber, how do they get a hold of you? What do they do to reach out?
So easiest way for us, technology, hit up our website, specialforcesfoundation.org, or social media. You can direct message us on social media, and if there's guys out there that are struggling, there's a ton of organizations that do good work. There's some out there that have kind of lost their way, and we get that. which is fine. They're still in their own way doing good work, and we will definitely, help point guys in the right direction. But if you're not a Green Beret, there's organizations out there that'll do work, but you got to take that first step. You got to lead the horse to water.
Yep.
And if just like selection, like it's funny because volunteering for selection is that's a big thing just for being selected. Like, wow, you took the step to at least volunteer and show up here. That says a lot about you. So that's a check mark already because you're there. Mm-hmm. With guys that are struggling, they're not alone. We're all struggling with something. And, I don't expect these companies to come in. There's a lot of well-meaning companies that want to help, but they don't know how. We do. And we have to take care of our own. That's what it boils down to. We have to step up and say, okay, this is working, this is not. This is where you need to go. And it's not a one-size-fits-all, but there are places out there to go. You just got to reach out. You got to start asking. You might get stonewalled, you might get the Heisman, stay at it. If your life and your family and everything that you've helped defend is worth it to you, then get better. Because you're still value added.
Absolutely.
You got any closing remarks, Alan?
Thank you guys for your service. I mean, this has been terrific. Just to answer your question on our side, we have our website is creekandtimberlegacy.org, and how most of the guys get to us is by nominations. So whether it's a friend or a family member or a brother or whatever it may be, they get nominated on our site. We have an outreach team, the intake team, but they come from volunteers and they become nominated. But I mean, it's a terrific thing that we've got the capabilities to be helping the people. I mean, there really is real need out there, and I mean, my closing remarks are, hey, if you need help or you know somebody that does need help, send them our way. Talk to them. Yeah. Let them know that it's not a thing of weakness just to talk about your problems. I mean, it's actually a thing of bravery and chivalry to, say, hey, listen, this is what I'm dealing with. And, that's
awesome. Well, on that note, everyone, thank you so much for listening and viewing for the YouTube watchers out there. If you got any questions for anyone up here in the comment section below, go ahead and ask any questions. We'll try our hardest to get those answered for you, and appreciate it, guys. Like I said, the websites will be down below, so please get in contact if you know a Green Beret or a veteran that wants to get on a hunt. Contact Creek and Timber Legacy or Special Forces Foundation. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it.